Vivek now suing the Department of Justice. He wants answers on how the chain of command operated that led to the prosecution of Donald Trump. We know Joe Biden has said that he wanted Trump prosecuted, said that Merrick Garland should stop acting like a weenie and do something about it. Guess what? Here we are. But did Joe Biden issue that order specifically? What did Merrick Garland say to Jack Smith? How did this whole thing get launched? Well, Vivek is suing under Freedom of Information Act to get that detailed. He was there in D.C., the only GOP candidate that I've seen who's taken a stand against this weaponized DOJ, and he was outside the courthouse announcing what is happening with this lawsuit and what he intends to do to get answers.
Earlier this week, I sued the U.S. Department of Justice, and I further filed an additional FOIA request.
We'll go through that lawsuit.
To understand what President Biden told Jack Smith, what Merrick Garland told Jack Smith, because we want the truth. Today, I'm in front of the courthouse in Washington, D.C., where the 45th President of the United States, my competitor in this race, will be arraigned later today. But I think that the symbolic moment of today is something far deeper than just this case. We live in an era of the noble lie, the so-called lie that the government tells to its people because it believes the people can't handle the truth. Why is it that we see the rise of 3 different indictments, 3 supposedly independent prosecutions at the same time in the midst of a presidential election? It's because the government does not trust the people to select their leaders.
They're going to pick him for us.
This is the old worldview rearing its ugly head again. We fought a revolution in this country in 1776 for a simple idea, that we the people determine how we select our leaders and have a government that is accountable to its people rather than the other way around. Yet today we now live in a country where when the people question that government, they are themselves the subject of scrutiny. That is wrong. I was in Nashville yesterday demanding the release of that transgender shooters manifesto. Tell the truth. Biden, Garland, tell us the truth about what you actually told Jack Smith. And you go back over the last year, it's the same story all over again. Tell us the truth about the COVID origin. Tell us the truth about where the virus originated. Tell us the truth about what we know about vaccine mandates and mask mandates.
They won't even tell us
in a recent
JFK.
hearing about UFOs in Congress, just tell us the truth instead of repeatedly hiding from us the information that we need as a people. Turns out that trust is a two-way relationship. The reason that the people don't trust the government is that our government no longer trusts the people. So is this a politicized persecution through prosecution? I certainly believe it is.
Yeah.
But it's the government's job to be transparent about exactly who told who what to bring about these prosecutions, because the fact they're arising at the same time is no accident. And I think it's best that the government now be transparent with the people about what their intentions actually are. Without that transparency, we can only expect far worse in the future.
Right on. This is an organized hit. And we've been saying this for a long time, that they were just moving pieces around on the chessboard, ready to spring them into action at any moment. And here we are. We've got 3 indictments. There's going to be a 4th one. That's not even counting the superseding indictment. And Vivek wants answers on this. I think every GOP candidate should want answers on this. This is one of the, if not the, one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue in the whole country. Because if you cannot use your voice to select your leaders because the DOJ, the FBI are setting the elections for us through their criminal prosecutions, the country's already gone. So Vivek is speaking out about it. The other people, the other candidates, not so much. They'll get around to reading the indictment when they get around to it. But here is the lawsuit from Vivek. Now, he's putting his money where his mouth is, and I got to hand it to him. He's the one candidate who's been saying the FBI should be literally disbanded and defunded like immediately. He's putting his money where his mouth is. 11 pages filed out of Washington, D.C., the D.C. Circuit Court. Vivek 2024 versus the Department of Justice. Oof, love it. Introduction, they say. Vivek brings this action under the Freedom of Information Act to respond, ordering the DOJ to respond to and fulfill the campaign FOIA request. They say, hey, DOJ, we already submitted our request in June. We seek documents that the DOJ has in their possession about the decision to bring a criminal indictment against Donald Trump on June 8th. That's just Exhibit 1. All the records related to the decision. Vivek also brings this suit to compel the Department of Justice to immediately respond to the FOIA request and disclose all responsive, non-exempt records. Vivek launched his campaign Feb 21, 2023, located in Columbus, Ohio. The campaign is a person within the meaning of FOIA, and they say the DOJ is a federal agency, and that FOIA requires the DOJ to promptly make available requested non-exempt agency records when they're reasonably described. FOIA requires that the agencies respond to a request within 20 working days, Saturdays, Sundays, holidays exempt. This 20-day limit may not be told by the agency, except that they may make one request to extend it for 20 days and can clarify the fees and the other things. Now, Vivek says, in unusual circumstances, FOIA does allow the 20-day time limit to be extended to 10 days. If unusual circumstances are invoked, they've got to provide notice on this. Unusual circumstances might be and can only occur when it's reasonably necessary that the agency would need to go to other agencies from other facilities, when there are voluminous records, or when they need to consult with other people. If the federal agency does not respond by the deadline, the requester, meaning Vivek, is deemed to have exhausted his remedies and can immediately pursue judicial review, which is what he's doing now. He says, in early 2022, the DOJ opened an investigation into Trump's classified documents. Presidency had already ended. In August 2022, the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago, which is now owned by Donald Trump, and they seized allegedly 102 purportedly classified documents. November 22, Jack Smith was appointed as special counsel, leading to the investigation of Trump. Federal grand jury reviewed the evidence, heard the testimony, and they brought an indictment in Florida. On June 8th, Trump was indicted. One day later, the indictment was unsealed. He got 37 felonies for violating the Espionage Act. Trump was indicted again on August 1st, this time for January 6th. On June 12th, the campaign called Vivek submitted a FOIA request and directed the request to the online FOIA portal. And they wanted these documents. Here's what Vivek is asking for. Memorialized, discussed, described plans or consideration by the DOJ or any other federal agency for bringing an indictment against Trump. I want it all. Between officers, employees of the federal government, anything memorialized with any non-government third parties to bring an indictment, and agents of Arabella advisors. This is interesting. Who are these people? Including those by or between any non-government third parties, like officers, employees, or agents of Arabella advisors. Who are these people? The New Venture Fund, the 1630 Fund, the Windward Fund, the Hopewell Fund. What? Projects housed in any of those entities, any political party, political committee, or agency thereof, and the big one, Biden for president. So I don't know what Vivek is asking for here. Who are all these people? Why is he asking for this stuff? Very, very curious. Might have some inside knowledge or something going on. Now, he also wants memorialized, discussed, or described any directive or encouragement by any officer to bring an indictment. Any emails, any notes, any summarized, interview journal notes. Any directives or encouragements by any non-government third parties against Trump, and preparatory materials for meetings provided to the president about a possible indictment of Trump. So documents that went over to Biden. They say the campaign wants records from January 20th, 2021 through the date that the DOJ gives us the documents. They say from Vivek's team, on June 27th, the DOJ acknowledged via email that it had received the campaign's request, and in an attached letter acknowledged that they got it on June 12th. They gave us a case number. Here it is. Now, it indicated that this requires a search and that it falls within unusual circumstances, I'm sure. And they said because of the, quote, unusual circumstances, they're extending the time limit to respond to the campaign beyond the 10 days. Yeah, it's very unusual. They don't want you to know about it because it would be unusual for them to be prosecuting their political opponents so nakedly and openly. The June response letter also indicated that because the campaign is also seeking records in the DOJ's CRM, their big database, the FBI and the OIG, the DOJ has separately forwarded those requests to all of the other agencies. Now, he says, Vivek says, we have not been notified what date they got those emails, those requests. On July 10th this year, FBI sent a letter back over to campaign Vivek acknowledging that a portion of the FOIA request had been received, but they didn't tell us when they got it. So Vivek's trying to calculate the end dates. When are they in violation of the law? When did the FBI get it? When should they be responding to us? They're not going to respond to us. That's going to trigger a breach. On July 13th, the FBI sent a letter to the campaign indicating that it was overly broad. Oh, and they didn't have enough detail to enable the FBI personnel to locate records within a reasonable amount of effort. They can't find it, man. The FBI can find a pimple on some dude's butt from the January 6th investigation with a telephoto lens with about 200 people working on it, but they can't identify some records that might have shown that they were a bunch of criminals. The FBI indicated that the campaign has 90 days from the date of this denial to administratively appeal the FBI's decision. The FBI did not indicate that any of the other portions of the FOIA request have been directed or closed, so we don't know when the end dates are. In the FOIA request, the campaign emphasized the time-sensitive nature of this request, and they requested the DOJ comply within 20 days. Of course, they're not going to do that. But as of July 11th, at the close of business, 20 working days has been extended. Now we are in breach territory. As of July 26th, 30 working days have now passed. And the DOJ has not made or communicated its determination in response to these requests, nor explained why any materials have been withheld. So Vivek says, we incorporate all of those paragraphs we just read. We know the law says they have 20 days to get us this stuff. Here, 30 days have elapsed, and now we can bring a claim. We have done that. They have not confirmed receipt of our request at the OIG, and the DOJ has also not provided a final determination. The DOJ has failed to make a timely determination about our request, and so we're filing these claims. Here's what we asked for. Vivek asks, he says, Your Honor, it's now time to declare that the Department of Justice failed to make and communicate a timely determination about the FOIA request in violation of the United States law. They also want to declare that the DOJ failed to promptly provide records and order the DOJ to immediately conduct a reasonable search for all responsive records and demonstrate that employed search methods reasonably calculated to cover our request. Also, order the DOJ to make a determination about why they withheld stuff and give us an index about it. Order them to make available to the campaign all non-exempt records, maintain jurisdiction over this in case they screw us again in the future, and give us attorney's fees. Respectfully submitted by Philip M. Gordon on Team Vivek. And can we just shout out Philip M. Gordon and Team Vivek on this? This is important work. I can't tell you how many lawsuits and various legal efforts we've covered here from the left. Guys like Mark Elias and Democracy Docket. They file lawfare all the time. Their entire campaign is basically lawfare. They did it in 2020 to change all of the election rules. They're going to do it again in 2024. In fact, they're already filing lawsuits to not change back the 2020 rules. A lot of states wanted to go back to pre-2020. And Mark Elias is filing lawsuits all over the place to keep them that way because that's how they won. And so this is excellent. This is what we want to see. Why are other Republican candidates not doing this? If the Republicans don't play in the lawfare space, they are going to lose just by default if they're not even playing. And this is going to get some response. They can lean on the DC courts. It might not go anywhere. The District of Columbia might tell them to get bent, but at least they're doing something and filing something. And we can see when they do get rejected or when the DC court comes up with some excuse, we can point right back to that and say, see, they are obfuscating our access to the truth. So shout out to Vivek for actually doing something. Now, Matt Gaetz is another guy who is in Congress. His hands are a little bit more tied, but he's got another proposal, another thought for what we can do about Jack Smith and the weaponized government. He says, let's subpoena him. We're in Congress after all.
Yeah, let's hope that Joe Biden doesn't find his way onto a bicycle anywhere. The question isn't what Joe Biden's doing. We already have observed that. The real question is, what will House Republicans do? And Carl, I want to discuss that. First, House Republicans should immediately demand that Jack Smith present himself for a transcribed interview before the Judiciary Committee in the next 15 days. Woo. If he does not do that, we should send a subpoena. If he ignores the subpoena, we should hold him in criminal contempt of the Congress so that he is the first prosecutor in American history to be prosecuting a case while himself under criminal contempt. And if Merrick Garland doesn't enforce that criminal contempt, then we ought to impeach Merrick Garland. Woo! And by the way, while we're doing all of that to showcase how political and indeed dirty this has all become, we can utilize congressional immunities to immunize President Trump. 18 USC 6002 subpart 3 gives any committee or subcommittee of the Congress the ability to subpoena a witness, bring them in, and functionally immunize them. And if we are not going to stand up.
That's an interesting point. Gal Luft, that should be what they use for him because he's currently under federal indictment as well, and he's on the run. But they could offer him immunity, bring him in to testify, have him blow the whistle in front of Congress in an open session for all of America to see, and then scoot him right back out of the country.
Congress's equities when it comes to election interference, when it comes to misuse of the DOJ, this is all an effort to try to distract us from the very real crimes committed by Hunter and Joe Biden. It's not a coincidence that Joe Biden is going to the beach now, but it is especially not a coincidence that on the heels of their former business partner, Devin Archer, saying that Joe Biden was functionally the closer, the guy that gave the credibility to the Biden brand for them to engage in international influence peddling, that just on the heels of that, now this indictment reads like a torturing of First Amendment protected activity. If you don't like the way they run elections, if you want a better way, if you want to offer a constitutionally contemplated objection, they want to make a criminal of you. That's a dangerous thing for the country. And if the House Judiciary Committee and House Republicans won't stand up for our republic, then what is the point of having us there anyway?
I know. Well, there was recently some commentary on CNN of all places, which is just the absolute worst. Check out what this one person said comparing the...
Let's pick up. Okay, we're going to hit that clip later. So let's get to this.
Prices, lower tax. What was it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sick comparison to suggest that sending planes through buildings to kill thousands of our fellow Americans, destroy our economy, and send our military into great consternation over the attack on the Pentagon, that is somehow analogous.
He's explaining that Trump is, Fanoni said that Trump is like Osama bin Laden.
To saying that we ought to have an objection and have people peacefully and patriotically protesting. I mean, there were people who had permits outside the Capitol for a peaceful demonstration, like we see, frankly, many days at the Capitol. And the fact that barriers were taken down and it was a confusing riot-like situation is obviously not something to celebrate, but it's also not something that puts any criminal culpability on President Trump. We don't need Jack Smith to tell us what happened on January 6th. We watched President Trump say that people should be peaceful and patriotic and have their voices heard. And by the way, not for nothing, Carl, but no Republican has been sworn in president of the United States absent some Democrat objection to the electors since George Herbert Walker Bush. I mean, these people were objecting to George W.'s elections. Where was the criminal indictment for Jim McGovern when he objected, or Sheila Jackson Lee, or Jamie Raskin? Of course, we would never do that to them.
Al Gore took it to the Supreme Court, said, I won.
Them because the Constitution contemplates a process by which we can have this debate. No less than Mike Pence, who, by the way, today appears to be quite interested in the subject, even said that we need to have the debate. And that's what we were preparing for. Marjorie Taylor Greene and myself, my colleagues, we were not there to try to foment some riot. We were there to put on evidence, have a debate, have a discussion, have a vote, and then very likely we knew Joe Biden was going to be the president of the United States. So they are taking First Amendment activity and they're trying to make it criminal, and that should frighten every American.